Greetings, folks. Welcome back to Living Life with Nani and Bobo. Here we are again. And we're going to touch on something that we said we weren't going to touch on anymore.
Because we can't stay away from it.
But it's our prerogative, right? My daughter has said to me many times when doing dinner at her house, I'll go first in the line. She's, Dad, you've earned it. So at 7 decades of life, I think we deserve to just do whatever we want. At any rate, we did some research on this whole parental estrangement thing. I found some very interesting research. It's also called exiting now, and it's often, this is research now. I got this from a Times article that's December 13th, 2024, and so it's always tied to something someone did or said. Quite often that's the seed, that's the genesis of it. And it's a tendency toward, with the younger generation, what they say is they're prioritizing relationships that aligns with their own identity over ancestral links, right? And a stunning figure to me that there was 1 in 2 adults in America are estranged from a loved one. That's 1 in 2, and within that, 1 in 5 said that it's their belief that it will never be reconciled. Those are some awful statistics. Over half of the estranged people that were interviewed for this research paper were asked if they thought reconciliation was possible, and they said they don't believe so. But that brings us to a point that Susan was talking about earlier when we were talking about this video.
In Matthew 9:26, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So that might be a statistic. That might be what's being said.
Statistics are just that, statistics.
Right. We believe biblically that all things are possible. We've seen it in our lives and others, and so we know that this is not the end.
I also found a quote by some individual named Zygarde Bauman. He, a psychologist or a sociologist, I believe, coined a phrase that we're in now. It's called liquid culture. It's like a rapidly changing culture with their norms and their values, traditional bonds and shared values that once unified us as people are no longer things that we're unified about. It's an exiting from those things.
And we've talked a lot. I mean, Terry and I have talked a lot about the social norms now are, I guess, very, whatever makes you happy. Very, right. We want satisfaction very immediately. We see that with, all the video games and all of these things. We've seen it in the children coming up. And so that's part of it. If you say something or do something that upsets someone,
right,
then that's room for them to discount. God only knows how many years you were their parent or their grandparent, and so that gets all thrown away, washed away by one thing that you said that might have, I don't know, ruffled their feathers a little. And you don't even know if you really said it or not, but that's what they're saying. So,
right,
of course,
it's their perception.
It's their perception. Their emotions are real. Their feelings are real. We're not discounting that. However, I don't know that it rises to the level of getting rid of your parents and your grandparents.
Well, and it's so far beyond just this estrangement thing. It's the eroding of our societal norms. I've said this for many years. Some people don't agree with me, but to me, it's all chipping away at the moral fabric of the country. So it's just this little thing here and a little thing there and a little thing. It's just chipped away. In 1962, we take the prayer out of schools. That's a little chip. A little chip, a little chip, a little chip, and before long, there's not much left of that moral fabric. So the question is then, we've often said we don't want to just want this to just be a gripe session. So we want to have answers and solutions and things, and I can only tell you things that we do. And I found a little bit in some research about some things we could do, but one of the things is following exiting from an adult child, and you might find that the attempts to reconcile go
Nowhere.
unfruitful. And so that's at that point, you do what you do, you try, and then you just have to get to the point where you just say, okay, we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait and let God do his job. But one of the biggest parts for us is you got to allow yourself to grieve. I think it's very similar to a death. When I was in grad school for social work, one of the discussions that came up was similar to this, but it's you have to. We want to just continue to take it on, but you just have to let it go.
You have to, perhaps there was something that happened. You have to forgive yourself. You've asked for forgiveness. They choose not to forgive. That becomes on them. You've done your biblical part. You've gone. You've asked for forgiveness. You've tried to reconcile. And at some point, and I know it hit me last week, and I just said, I'm done. I'm done crying. I'm done apologizing. I'm done taking on feeling bad about myself. There was nothing more I could do. And so I just, for me personally, I had to open my hands up and say, it belongs to you, God. There's nothing I can do. I can't fight this anymore. There's no words. I can't, there's no magic word that can be said.
I just, a minute ago, I lost my train of thought. That's why you saw me stumbling around a little bit. But my thought was, when I had mentioned that it's like a death in the family, it was in grad school, they talked about parents that had a child that was transgender. So it used to be I had a son, and now I find out that I have a daughter. It literally, to them, it was like a death of their son. And so this estrangement thing is very much like a death, and you have to grieve it.
You do. You have to grieve it, and you have to. For me, one of the most difficult things has been that you can't believe this has happened, number one. Number two, you're just in shock that all the years that perhaps you thought were good are just thrown away. And so you're left with literally nothing.
It's kind of empty. It seems like she said, it seemed like all the things that people have said to you and the memories that you've had, all the things you've done, like Nani said, hey, we thought it was great times. Now all of a sudden you find out, maybe not. But that's the part where you have to forgive yourself. Nani had the tendency to go there where you like to blame yourself. I must have done something wrong. I fell short. I got news for us all. There's no book for parenting. You got to take a test to get a driver's license, but any schmuck on a planet could have kids. So, you do the best you can do. And if it's not malicious, then you have to let that go. You can't take that on. And then furthermore, don't let it define you. Oh my gosh. Quite often people get diagnosed with something, especially in mental illness, and then they become that mental illness, man. They become that diagnosis. Just because this has happened, you don't have to take it on. Do not take it on. And it's our tendency to do that as parents. I get it. But eventually, you just got to let that go.
You do, as hard as it is. And something just happened yesterday. I'm not going to use names or anything, but I said, do you remember when so-and-so did this with the cue balls on the pool table? And he said right away, I don't want to remember that. That's too painful. But something that we have to do is we have to remember the good things.
Well, and that's one of the things that I had wanted to say was you have to change your focus on focusing on the loss and change the angle a little bit and focus on the good stuff that you had. You know, maybe there's people saying that those things weren't good, but they were. If they were good for you, and you know they were good, so you focus on the good stuff. You focus on the times you had. We often tell the story that when the grandkids were little, we would keep 5 of them on New Year's Eve, and it was just great times. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you got to focus on. And then at least is my perspective of things. You have to accept the reality of what it is, right? This is where many people are, and I'm stunned at how pervasive this is in society. It's the way it is. We can't affect the change in it anymore. So you just have to accept it without giving up hope. Without giving up hope. Can't give up hope. Susan talked about that scripture earlier. We have hope in God that our times are in His hands.
I wish I could say that tomorrow it changes, but a year from now, I don't know. It could. I wake up every single morning and I say, today is a day of anticipation. Today is a day of expectation that a miracle will happen.
Right.
You know, and when I look at that, that will be a miracle, because it isn't something. A miracle comes when you've done all that you know and there's nothing left you can do, and God steps in.
See, here's the point. I've said this so many times. You have to look back to what God's brought you through in the past, what He's delivered you from, what He's brought you to. I've said this to many people. In your mind, think of the very worst thing that's ever happened to you, and you're still standing. God told the Israelites when they crossed over the river into the Promised Land to make a pile of stones, so when the kids in the future ask, "Hey, what are these stones for?" you can tell them what it represents and how God brought us through. So look back at those pile of stones you have in your life that were good monuments to good times, and focus on those things.
So it doesn't tear you down. It has this has the ability, if you let it, to attack your self-esteem, your self-worth. I mean, it's even brought great tension for a while here in our marriage, because we didn't know how to handle it at
Right.
first. It was just so overwhelming and so unbelievable that, why is this happening? And we couldn't figure it out. So we had to come to that place. And I'm not saying, God knows my heart here. I'm not saying that I've got this all figured out and perfected.
No.
Because again, every single morning when I go to prayer, this is at the top of my list. Like, God, get me through the day. Help me to put this where it needs to be. And Terry says, I'll put a new song in my heart. Give me lightness in my spirit again. Like, I don't want to walk around with heaviness. Like I said to my friend, I didn't tell her the latest development, and I'm not going to get into it, but I said I didn't want to be that friend that always comes with a problem. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to talk about the pain
this
all
one
the time.
one thing in life does not define you.
No.
You are far more than just this particular issue in your life. That's not all you are. That's not who you are. That's part of what you're going through right now, but it's not part of who you are. You are far more than whatever this is going on in your life. You're far more than that, my friends.
So I don't know how anybody else handles things, but if I didn't have the Lord in my life that I could run to, that I can go to, and I'll, He gave me this scripture, I don't even know how long ago, and I didn't understand why at the time. It said, "Grieve not, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." And I thought, well, I don't have anything I'm grieving about. Well, little did I know, it wasn't far away, that I would be grieving not seeing my grandchildren. I would be grieving the loss of these loved ones. And
well, friends, we could beat this dead horse for a long time, but I think we've said enough for today. I would just love to hear from you all about what you think about this, what you're going through. There's one particular person that follows us that has made some comments that are just very encouraging to us, and she's an encouragement to us. So that's the goal of this whole thing, is developing a community where we can encourage one another and just share stuff. We got a lot of stuff we could share.
Well, we have gone into it all. Like he said, we're not going to keep, but there is a lot to talk about because this thing is just so huge.
It's far more pervasive than when I started looking for peer-reviewed research papers. It's stunning, and there's aspects of this that they're just beginning to study now. There's words that are thrown out like resocialization and all this sort of thing where, the younger people are trying to re-socialize the way things are done, but there's no research yet on how these estrangement things affect people outside of the ones that got estranged. But there is no research yet that I'm aware of on how it's affecting those that have basically put up the boundaries.
So I hope you have hope. I know we have hope. Again, this is a process, and I think that's why it's something we can talk about for a long time to come, because it's a process. To me, every day is a different day of how you're processing, how you're looking at it.
Right.
So that's what we hope to do here.
But His mercies are new every morning.
They're new every morning.
Okay.
I say that every day.
We'll be okay.
And so that's what we want to just keep on going, and just trusting that you might have some help for us as we will for you. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please comment.
Yep. Love to hear from you.
YouTube looks for that so we can, they'll push our videos back out. So if you're enjoying this or you've got something to say, please let us know. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
God bless,
God
folks.
bless you.